Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. I'm so excited that you're here at the Art of Healthy Retirement podcast, and I have a very super special guest today. And for those of you who have been listening, thank you very much. And for those of you who are new, let me tell you a little bit about why I created this. It's really a podcast to support business experts who are transforming from a career into healthy retirement, or those business experts who have retired. Our format is very interview style, and this can be found on my YouTube channel under my name, Nancy Schwartz. And we focus normally on how guests are now living their life. And Justin Smith has a few more decades to go before this, but we'll get to Justin in just a second. But he's really driving such value into the community where we are now, that's really why I wanted to have him on this podcast, because my goal is that what we're talking about is educational, and also that it showcases more information that we can really use in the moment. So let me quickly introduce Justin. Justin is with Savant Wealth Management. He has extensive credentialing in this firm as well as in a prior, currently holding a CAP, a CFA, and a CFP. Justin is a superpower in terms of really diving into supporting those who are in their 50s and 60s who are planning for their next chapter, and really has done an extraordinary job in communication and working with individuals that really Justin is looking at it from the point of view of the financial piece, and whereby I am looking at it more with a little bit of the financial piece, but also much more from the health point of view. So Justin, welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you so much for your time today. And I'm excited to share with our audience what you want to talk about. So take the stage, kind sir, and lead us.
Perfect. Appreciate you having me here, and I've enjoyed all of our conversations. And this is just a natural outcropping of that, because I think, as you mentioned, your world and my world are just so complementary to each other and interconnected. This is a great conversation to be having. So I'm excited to explore kind of my viewpoints, my planning process I help people go through as they're planning for the next chapter. And I think what I'm noticing and why we jive so well is that people are making their health and well-being in the next chapter a substantially bigger priority than they ever have before. This
Finally,
is not
right.
Yeah.
Finally, yeah.
This
That's
is not
the beauty.
Yeah, this is not your grandfather's retirement where you work till 65, live off your savings for maybe 10 years if you're lucky, and then kind of go quietly. This is an entire new chapter of your life that hopefully will stretch decades and decades, and being prepared mentally, physically, emotionally, financially are all really important things. So excited to dive into that.
Awesome. So tell us what you're doing, because for those who are listening, I just think that this is such a great, Justin has so many resources, first of all, that he's always sharing and educating. And I think we think similarly on this, that it's really a lot about education. Both you and I come from the point of view that really retirement has been really reclusive in terms of education and formal training. Like I never had a course in retirement, really, right? And those that I did were kind of superficial. I never really felt that it was, reality, right? Reality was playing out. And so Justin and I come at that from that point of view, that we were really we have so much information, and that retirement can be very, very complex. So Justin, tell everybody about some of the resources that you have and why you're here today, because Justin is involved in a really terrific project that is going to take some time, and then we need your help. So that's why we're here on the podcast for sure.
Yeah. So ultimately, the reason I'm here and that we're talking and that I've kind of dedicated my focus and professional attention to this area is because I see the paradigm shifting with retirement. Again, like I said before, this is not your grandfather's retirement. People might want to have some period in between full-time work and full stop retirement. Maybe take some time and create an intentional chapter in between there where you can maybe downshift or slow down. There's a lot of different terminology people use, whether it's hybrid retirement, semi-retirement, but it's just an interesting way to approach it. I think it's a way for people to get the best of both worlds in terms of the fulfillment and compensation and purpose from work, but enough time and independence and autonomy from that free time, so they can have the best of all worlds. People don't want to be chained to their desk and working 60 hours a week and having to crisscross the country on flights and living in hotels when they've already achieved a degree of financial success. They might want to kind of, again, redefine what work looks like for them. So that is a brilliant concept. Where I come in is that executing that is really complicated. There's a lot more moving parts. There's not a proven blueprint, right? We already have a proven blueprint with all of the systems in our country are built for turn 65, get on Medicare, collect Social Security, et cetera, et cetera. But what if you don't want to wait until to take the exit at age 65, maybe you want to take the exit at age 56 and travel the back roads a little bit. That's an uncharted path. So I've spent a lot of my time devoted to helping people on that path, guiding them, giving them resources, creating a specific financial planning process that helps people navigate that uncharted territory. Because every person's journey, especially if it's one of those non-traditional journeys, is going to be unique. So it's really helpful to have professional guidance and expertise there. As you mentioned, one of the things I've developed is my Career Crossroads workbook and on-demand webinar. We'll make those available. They're easily accessible on my LinkedIn profile as well. You can get them directly from Nancy if you'd like. But that
I'll post it in our YouTube notes so everybody can. So
Perfect.
Thank you, Justin. That's very gracious of you.
Yeah, so that is a free download where you can kind of work through the workbook, figure out, work through the steps that I lay out, the exact steps I work with my clients. There's also an on-demand webinar that kind of breaks down some of the technical components in a little bit further detail. But the idea is that I've distilled it down simple enough where you can maybe digest it in a Saturday afternoon, work through it, and start to have a thumbnail sketch of what you want your plan to look like. We call it a victory lap plan, right? We want you're not done running the race yet, but you're going to maybe not be stepping on the gas completely going 100 miles an hour. So you're going to take a victory lap. So that's what all those resources are for. And again, I'm happy to share those with everybody listening today. And then you alluded also to the kind of follow-on project to that is that there are a number of different ways people can pursue a hybrid retirement or semi-retirement. But the number one most common way is for people to become a consultant or a contractor or freelancer, et cetera. Far and away, that is the most common path. Now, some people go more entrepreneurial paths, or they do a hard pivot into a completely different industry. I absolutely love helping those people too, but I wanted to kind of address the most common path that people take. So the follow-on project I'm tentatively calling How to Become a Consultant. It'll be an expansion of that Career Crossroads workbook with additional stories and guidance and worksheets to help people actually execute on that type of strategy if that's what they're interested in doing for their next act. So the call I'll put out there is that if you're thinking about pursuing that, if that's something that's interesting to you, maybe you're midway through the journey, I'd love to talk to you to get your firsthand experiences about the benefits and the challenges and the unforeseen hurdles that came up on your road, because I think those stories can help the people who are a couple steps behind you on the path as I'm putting this project together. And I'd also welcome the opportunity to provide any guidance or wisdom I can in that conversation as well. So I'd love to talk to anybody who's on that path and would be open to discussing it.
Yeah. So I think that this is such an incredible opportunity for someone to share and really magnify their impact, right? Because Justin is distilling these conversations into what potentially might be a bestseller, New York Times bestseller. We don't know yet. It's a project in progress, right? And similarly for myself, if I've offered to Justin, I'm very happy to share some of my client stories, which I'll tell you one right now, and also take calls as well, and share it with Justin as well to be able to support him, because I think it's a really it's something new in the marketplace that we need to start addressing, and there is an urgency to this. Because always people say, oh, I'll get to it, or I'll get to it, but they never do. And then they kind of fall forward. And the point of Justin's project is to not fall forward, but really to start thinking about and opening up your mind to various possibilities that are out there. And, I've told Justin, I tried so many different paths before I found this company that I love. And that's what I really love. So I encourage you to try and fail, and then share these opportunities that you've learned, because I'm sure there's so many stories out there that we just don't know, Justin, but that they're there. And we appreciate people we need human subjects, because it's a human experience, so that people would share this, because I think it's really going to help others down the road as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, because this is not, like you alluded to, it's not a straight line.
No.
There's lots of twists and turns and iterations. And with any iterative process, the sooner you can get started and start making experiments, the better. Right. If you are simply just thinking about, in a little while, in a couple of years, I'm going to start what you think is going to be the path for you, the only thing we know for certain is that it's almost certainly going to change. So why not start the process with small experiments? And I know it's a huge challenge, because if you're at the stage where you're thinking about it, you're slammed with work obligations. There's no time and energy and focus to carve out to start doing a plan, really diving into it. And that's, again, one of the reasons I designed that workbook to be digestible in a afternoon on the weekend, to at least just put some things on paper, nothing elaborate. My whole intention is people to walk away with that, with a single page that just gives them a little direction and guidance they can start executing on, and saying, I'm going to start experimenting with A, B, and C, such that in 3 years, when I reach the anticipated finish line, I am not, going to the gardening center on day one. I've already planted seeds and they've started growing, and I'm learning about what works, what's not working, what might need to shift, all those things. So again, instead of saying, I'm going to take up gardening, go plant something this weekend and just tend to it for a while and see what develops, because you're going to learn a lot through that process. And obviously, again, the big challenge is finding the time and the energy and the resources to make space for that. But it's really so important, because if you don't, you're going to reach the finish line and you're going to have too much time on your hands, and you're just going to be staring at your plants that you've planted, waiting for them to grow, and you're probably going to grow impatient, and you're just not going to have it's going to be very difficult to let everything develop naturally, as it always does.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on that, because Justin, on my side, I think it's so important that people invest in themselves, and that's absolutely an investment, an invaluable investment in, and I think that I don't know, there's a procrastination to this in some manner, some more in people and then others, but I cannot tell you how important it is to start and have a little bit of runway before you take off. And without that, it's really challenging. There's so many moving parts, as Justin alluded to. There's change in identity. There's change in lifestyle. There's so many different things that come to forth. And it's also about getting to know yourself again, right? And who are you becoming? And that takes time. This is not I'm going to go into my workspace and, in an afternoon, yes, I'm going to hammer out Justin's plan, but then I'm going to be living it, what I design on Justin's gracious manual that you'll have. But it takes time, and you may say, ooh, why did I write that down? Or, wow, I really like this. Let me shift a little bit. But it's a process. It's not an instant. And I think we live in such an instant society, but this is your life we're talking about here. And that's really a fundamental thing for me. What matters most for that individual, right? You and I may say we like this or that for that client, but it's that client's life. So they have to live that,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let me just share with you a story. Would that be okay, Justin? If I
Absolutely.
just I've shared this story. This is one of my clients, just to show you an example of what we're looking for Justin and his project. So I had a client. He was a Marine and really served our country. And thank you all the service people who are around the world helping us on a daily basis. And then came home, really wanted to avoid home, and then got a very large job in a bank in security. And he worked that job for another 20, 25 years. And what was happening to him was that he really wanted the social interaction after the Marines. He didn't want to be in the home situation. But what he found over time was that the job was very physical, and it just was, in another 25 years, a bit more demanding than he really wanted. And he also had trouble accepting that his body was just, he couldn't go like he was 18 years old in the Marines, right? It was very challenging for him. And so he retired very reluctantly, but beloved in both these positions. I mean, he really had great positions, but ultimately, because he did not find his next chapter, these were both full-time positions, as Justin is saying, the more of a consultancy or mentorship. Chip Conley has a book out. It's all about mentoring and wisdom and intuition. Sort of an intermediary step, and is what Justin is talking about here, which is what I really love. He passed away in 2 years. He was heartbroken and didn't want to live that life in the home that he had never faced. He was always outside facing. So I don't mean to scare you, but we know that there are many, many stories like this where and I said to Justin, because he was a Marine, it's like him being on this carrier in the middle of the ocean, and those planes that take off in these boats, and here he is circling around the globe doing whatever he's doing, and then all of a sudden he comes in from wherever and he slams from like Mach to zero. And that's what he did with his life and his body. And so we're interested in what could he have done? And this is through the education. There are things he could do, right? My goodness, so talented. He was a Marine. He worked in security and could teach or mentor, or there's so many things that he could have done. Volunteer, sit on boards, invest. I mean, there's like a million things to think about, but he had no one to lead him to that. And I think that that's really what you're putting on the table, that this is a possibility to entertain in some fashion in your lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been other actually well-documented instances of that. There's some high-power engineering firms where the longevity of the senior engineers after they retire is remarkably shorter than what should it be actuarially, because they've dedicated 40 plus years of their life to doing one thing, and they can't be, a part-time engineer while they're out golfing or on a cruise or things like that. They just
Right.
lose so much of their identity and purpose and drive
Right.
that the rest of them just gives up too, which is a horribly sad thing. Now, again, executing on some sort of hybrid path is really tricky. It is
Yeah.
by no means easy, but it is absolutely worth pursuing. It's worth doing the hard work because, again, you can get the best of both worlds. You can cherry pick. These are the 2 or 3 things that really get me up in the morning every day from work. These are the 5 things I'd love to never do again, and then
Right. Right.
backfill with some of the things, healthy lifestyle, whatever that new activity or the activity that you stopped playing tennis 20 years ago and you want to pick back up again, whatever it might be.
Pickleball now, it's popular. So
Pickleball is very
yeah.
hot. Yeah. I've caught the fever myself, so I'm playing
Oh,
that a
good for
lot
you.
too.
See, Justin could
See,
teach us. This is
see,
fabulous.
I'm taking my own advice. I got started early, so I have
Yeah, so you're
uh,
ready.
yeah. But yeah, it just goes to show that it's really important to have something because, again, that transition into full stop retirement can be really abrupt. And again, when you have your purpose and identity and fulfillment and social connection, so much of your life tied to that, the day that it's gone, there's just such a huge void.
Yeah. And the search, let me unpack a lot what Justin was saying because it's so valuable. So the Surgeon General's just come out with loneliness. It is like at a epidemic proportion across children in school all the way up to the elders of the world, right? So finding that those relationships and understanding who you are. So are you a person who's better one-on-one? Is it better? Are you better in small groups? Do you like big groups of people? Are you an introvert or an extrovert? I mean, it's really looking deeply within yourself so that you understand your pathway. And then the other thing, Justin, that you said that was really interesting about the engineers is potentially with those engineers, maybe they could have assessed their skill sets of what they were incredible about and kind of gone a little bit more on the peripheral, not the day-to-day operations, but more
Exactly.
on the peripheral and asking that question, which you said, what is it that they hate, that they don't want to do, right? What are those skill sets that they love to do, right? And then what skill sets would they like to develop that potentially in that organization, the firm said, I'm sorry, you're on this project, and they really wanted to be on that project, but there's no software or building or something that they were really interested in that they thought, ooh, from an engineering point of view, this could be really cool,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how do people get in touch with you, and what's the process? And tell us anything more that you have that you would love to share with us in terms of this great project.
Yeah. So we'll start with the workbook again. We'll make that available, and you can also find me on LinkedIn, Justin D. Smith, Justin D as in David Smith, with Savant Wealth Management on LinkedIn. All these things are featured prominently there, so I'm hopefully pretty easy to find. And then I'll kind of just briefly give you the 2-minute preview of what's in the workbook, right?
Great.
Because it is part life planning, part financial planning, and it's certainly not an exhaustive guide. There are many things, just example, your health and well-being. I don't address that, but obviously that's an incredibly important piece of designing this next chapter. This resource is predominantly geared towards the financial side, but you'll see there's a lot more to it than just stocks and bonds. That's virtually none of the book. Where it really starts is it goes through the financial planning process I work with my clients through. So it starts by really defining what is your vision for the next chapter? What do you want it to look like? Just high level themes. We have a couple exercises so you can basically distill it down to 2 or 3 sentences of this is the vision for the future. That is the North Star that I'm going to be navigating towards. Once we have that in place, then we can start setting goals that are rooted in supporting that vision. And we want to have a variety of different goals that support that vision. There will be goals for your time and work, goals for your social life, goals for your relationships, goals for your money, goals for your health and well-being. All of those things should, you should have goals that you want to achieve on each of those levels, all again in support of your vision. And then from that, each one of those goals needs to have action steps to support them and help you achieve the goals. Just writing it down on paper isn't going to help that, right? You actually have to have an action plan of, I want to be more active and healthy in this next chapter. That could be a goal. Let's make it a little bit more tangible, right? Let's make it a little bit more measurable and then set up an action plan. I'm going to play pickleball on Tuesdays. I'm going to go for a walk 4 days a week. I'm going to do this, et cetera, et cetera. So I focus the action planning just on the financial side. That's my professional expertise. I'm going to let the personal trainers and the life coaches and the career experts put together their own guides for the other components, but the financial side is where I go a little bit deeper. And I have 5 critical action planning steps we talk about for people at this stage in life. So these are the things, the common threads that I see people have to solve for if they want to make this, pursuit of a new chapter, pursuit of a hybrid retirement, if they want it to be successful. So those 5 key areas are cash flow. Even up to this point, you've probably, W-2 there's the cash flow. It's pretty simple. It's going to get a lot more complicated. Might be coming from different sources. If you are starting a business or doing consulting or freelancing, contracting, there are going to be ups and downs. That paycheck is not coming in every 2 weeks for the same dollar amount. So you need to have a plan to how you're going to provide for your basic standard of living. And again, it's probably going to be from a variety of different sources. And you're going to need to build in new safety nets that you haven't previously had. Because again, you are kind of the last backstop to providing your own cash flow here. So that's the critical component number 1. Critical component number 2 is healthcare planning, specifically health insurance planning. Obviously, Nancy, you're a huge proponent. The first thing we should do here is obviously just take good care of ourselves from a preventative standpoint, but you still need to have health insurance. And again, if you are deviating off of the traditional path, that means you're going to have a gap between traditional employer-provided healthcare and Medicare at age 65. That gap can be incredibly daunting to navigate. It can be very expensive. So there's a variety of things we talk about how to plan around that, whether it's ACA plans, creative arrangements through your new work environment, lots of different options, but you need to have a plan for how you're going to get health coverage through that gap pre-65.
Yeah, and I'm going to interrupt you because I just want to share that is such a critical component because people don't realize how costly healthcare is. And then you've only talked about healthcare. We haven't talked about, well, maybe you're going to talk about next, all the insurances around the healthcare pieces as well. So it's really eye-opening to a lot of clients. They're like, what do you mean? Because they never really had to think about that.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for somebody in their 50s or 60s, a married couple, to have health insurance premiums north of $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
That is a big line item, no matter how much money you're making. That is a big line item on this new budget you're putting together. So think through that. The good news is there are some big opportunities with the Affordable Care Act. This was almost impossible to do even 10 or 15 years ago, pre-Affordable Care Act, because of all the different rules that have been changed. But now everybody can at least access it, but it might be expensive. If your income is at a level that's low enough, you can also qualify for subsidies, which can be very generous and save you a lot of money, significantly reduce the impact of those premiums. So critical planning piece there. And the thing I stress is you shouldn't just work until 65 just for health insurance. There's other options out there, and you don't need to go work for Starbucks or Home Depot. Nothing against those companies. Those are just the common places that people pre-65 go for flexible employment to just attain health insurance. Again, those are good options. I know many people that have done that, but there are more options than just those. So think through that. The third thing to be thinking through is all of the different employee benefits and including Social Security. Most people who have been at a high level are going to have some complex decisions and timelines to coordinate, whether it's pensions, restricted stock, stock options, deferred compensation, bonus programs. All these different things have different timelines, different rules, different implications for how you execute on them. And they're going to integrate into all these other components of your plan as well. So you get a really well thought out game plan for how you're going to deal with each one of those. And then same with Social Security. One of the easy buttons, if you're going on this hybrid retirement path, is say, oh, I just got to get to 62. And then I can take Social Security at 62. I get to, exit 3 years early instead of waiting till 65. Sometimes that can make sense, but very often what I'm finding is that deferring till either full retirement age or age 70 is a lot better off, especially if you are listening to people like Nancy, taking care of your health and doing the right things to extend your longevity. The break-even ages for deferring Social Security are not as high as you think most of the time. So often, if you're a healthy person with a modestly healthy lifestyle, deferring is going to be advantageous for you for a number of reasons. So thinking through it, all of those benefits, coordinating your strategy is number 3. Number 4 is tax planning. Everything we've talked up to this point and the 5th point all have tax implications.
Yeah.
So that really is incredibly important to think through, because if you're not careful, the limited resources you have could be significantly eroded by taxes. And I think the key thing to think about here is that most of us, when we're in the W-2 situation, there's not a whole lot of levers we can pull. Your income just is what it is, and the tax is already withheld. There's not a whole lot of moving parts. But when you're in this hybrid mode and you might have multiple sources of income, you might have high years and low years, there's a lot more levers to pull. And what I like to do is tell people to forecast out next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years out into the future, what tax rates might look like, so you can identify the low points and the high points. And in the simplest terms, we're just trying to move you towards the equilibrium. So we might increase income in the low years, decrease income in the high years to flatten out and smooth out your tax burden. And if we do that repeatedly and diligently over a decade or so, it can have a tremendous effect on your lifetime tax burden.
Yeah, and also the regulatory is constantly changing, so it's really important to work with a professional like Justin, and potentially your own private accountant, because keeping on top of what state does what, where, and your clients may, Justin, have revenue coming in from different states. It can get really complicated.
Absolutely.
And believe me, you don't want to be audited. That's all I'm having to say. So it really pays. And I also love what Justin's saying, which I advise as well, is set not only the budget, but set, I say 7 to 10 years. You got to know, because you also want to have that rainy day situation. We're having one right now with the banks, and we're just not quite clear where we're going. So we want to have security in ourselves that we know where we are.
Yeah. And it is a paradigm shift for a lot of people. Most of us just look at taxes in the rearview mirror. It's April, we're looking in the rearview mirror, reporting what happened.
Right.
What we need to do is focus most of our time and attention on the windshield. What does the decade in front of us look like? And let's navigate that road so we can reduce our taxes. And then that takes us to the 5th point, which is investments. Now, that is kind of what most people perceive as, my job, what I do. Yes, we do that well, but it's only really one component of your plan. Obviously, you need to have the risk level right. You need to have those cash reserves right. You need to make sure that the portfolio is going to provide the cash you need. So that's really important. It's at a minimum worth revisiting as you're getting closer to the finish line or this pivot point, because life's going to be different. You're going to need a different, investment portfolio to support that new chapter. And this is often where the rubber meets the road, because people have been comfortable doing it themselves on the investment side, or maybe they've had help on the investment side only, but they get to this point and they realize, hey, those other components that we're talking about, I need help with those too. So it's not uncommon for people to kind of revisit who are the professionals in my life at that time and say, maybe I need somebody who has more breadth and depth of experience on all these different interconnected points and can help me coordinate it all. So that's kind of a long-winded, I promised, I think, a shorter preview of it. We went a
No,
little
but
longer.
people
Yeah.
need to hear this, and I think it's to your latter point, the last point. Hire professionals. I mean, you want your best life. You want to live your best life, and by that, when I say hire a professional, I don't say, here, Justin, or here, Nancy, we're not going to talk for a year. No, you're on top of those guys. You're talking to those guys every month, or whatever your strategy is, or whatever that house prepares for you. The world moves so rapidly now. You really need to own and manage that person that you engage, or that firm that you engage. And if, I always say, ask questions. If you don't understand, don't just say, I was afraid to ask Justin that question. Because if he doesn't know, he's going to go to the person who leads him. And then if they need to go even deeper in the firm, they're going to get you the answer that you want. So, stay tuned is what I always say. Stay tuned. It's so important for your well-being to understand that. And I'm talking about from a health and wellness point of view, and you're talking about, that your client has the appropriate non-taxed finances and other things that aren't going to be taxed. But it's so important. And again, the regulations even surprise the professionals. Sometimes they just come out of the blue sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the takeaway there is create a plan and put a plan together. Don't be afraid to get help and get guidance on that. And then, as we talked about up front, I'm looking to help more people with this project and with the work that I'm doing. So that's where this how to become a consultant project comes into play. So again, if you're just thinking about starting off the journey, I'd love to hear from you about kind of your perspective on it. If you're stuck in the weeds right now, kind of a couple years in, trudging through it, that's a phenomenal time to check in, maybe get an outside perspective, and I'd love to hear about your journey. Or if you're just kind of happily on cruise control and you've had some fortunate things develop in your victory lap, I'd love to hear about that too, because again, I think what we're trying to do is help more people, help the people who are looking to follow on the path that you've bravely blazed previously.
Yeah, and every generation is different, right? So those that we know today, for the next generation, is going to be different. So we're constantly refining, redefining, and making sure that we have unique solutions for everyone, because everyone's unique, and that the protocols have to be different. And so that's I think you, Justin, and your firm are very aligned to that, and similar to me. This is not cookie cutter. This is, this takes time. This is a process to support that individual's growth and expansiveness in and around retirement. Yeah. So we can find you on LinkedIn. So thank you, Justin. I just think what you've done is really wonderful to share your project with us, and I will put in the notes where to find you.
Perfect.
And for those who would like to learn more about my business, and I'm happy to take your story if you have some amazing story of being a consultant whereby we can help Justin in his project of research we need human subjects. So this is our appeal together. Please reach out to me, and I'll give you all my contact numbers as well. So Justin, closing words and wise wisdom to us out there that are listening or perhaps on the replay. And thank you, Justin. We just loved having you today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Last words to the audience.
Start now, make a plan.
All right. You heard it from Justin. Start now, make a plan. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.